Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, we brought him back, Marty Strong, with another book of his B series, Be Visionary. Let me just say something about being visionary as a leader. I don't think we understand it very well. I think we throw the term, leaders have to have a vision or be visionary, but I don't think we really dig into what does that really mean, and what traits does a leader need to possess in order to truly be visionary, I think is a question. And this book, by the way, Marty's book answers that question, I think so adeptly. And then the other part I have here that he wrote about in this book is, are you valuing optimization over strategy? It's a really interesting question. And how much do you trust the strategy that you have? Are you looking for consensus, or can you stand on your own? It's another question Marty asks in this book. And I think all the questions that he asks us and holds ourselves accountable to what we say we're going to do and what we believe in. And do we have the faith strong enough to believe and carry out what we say that we're going to do? The book is one that will challenge you. I'm not going to lie to you. It will challenge you. But I can tell you this, after reading it and reading it again, taking notes on it and digging into it, I can honestly say that this book, Be Visionary, is a game changer. Absolute 100% game changer. It's life-changing. It really made me think, and I think you're going to really love this book. You're going to love talking to him. Before we get to him, though, let's do what we do every week. We're four-part people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. Fact of the matter is, if we're not working on all those areas every day of our lives, we are not growing, we are dying. We have to be in constant work on who we are in those four areas. And so what we do on the show every week is I have you evaluate yourself in these four areas on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being average. So for example, physically, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate yourself? Getting enough exercise, eating right, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, taking care of your body. 5 being average, how would you rate yourself? Now, if you're a 2, or 3 or lower number, I don't want you to be alarmed, and that's not what we're here to do. We're going to use that as a starting point of where we improve from. And so we're not going to try to go from a 2 to a 10 or a 3 to a 10, or even a 5 to a 10. What we're trying to do is get to a 2.5 or a 3.5 or 5.5. There's certainly something that you can do in your physical arena that can move you up just a little bit. What is that? And then don't just think about it, take action on it. All right. That's your first number. Second number is your mental intellectual number. You know what? You can't just read or listen to a book and just think it's going to change you. You do have to take action on it. And part of our intellectual growth and wisdom and understanding and knowledge is taking the information that we have and then doing something with it that we take out into the world that changes us and changes others. And I think reading books, and as I tell my coaching clients, listening to books is great. But when you're done listening to a book, take one thing you're going to take action on, right? And be committed to it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing when it comes to your intellectual growth and taking action on it? That's your second number. Third number is your emotional number. Break it down into 2 pieces, really. It goes like this. The first half of it is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure, right? Well, you want to be visionary, you're going to have some emotional control. That's part of it. It's not just about the intellectual and the physical. Marty talks about those in the book, in fact, in this book. But you know what? Your emotional control is extraordinarily important. And Marty talks about it a little bit in the book. He talks about the amygdala hijack. Right, it's an old part of our brain that if we're not careful, all of a sudden our amygdala takes over, and the next thing you know, we're making rash and irrational decisions that are not helping ourselves, much less anybody else. And so How well are you able to control your emotions under that stress and under that pressure? Second part is how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of another person? Extraordinarily important. You want to be a leader, you need to understand other people, and you need to grow them. And if you're going to grow other people as a leader with a vision, if you want them on the same page with you, if you want them in alignment, if you're going to pitch your message, you need to understand where they're at emotionally, and you need to identify it. Maybe that's you growing your emotional vocabulary over the course of time. That's your third number. The fourth number is the spiritual. And wherever you're at spiritually, the fact of the matter is we're all spiritual beings in a physical body. There is the spirit of the human spirit that drives us and keeps us going because we don't want to die. There's part of our spirit. But the other part is that we live by faith every day of your life, whether you want to agree with that or not. It's true. You started your car this morning and you believed it was going to start. You pushed that button. You drank your cup of coffee believing it wasn't poisonous. Sat in that chair believing it wasn't going to fall apart. You made plans for the future believing those plans are going to happen even though they haven't happened yet. That's all faith. That's a spiritual concept. Fact of the matter is, if you remove the physical, mental, and emotional, what we're left with is a spiritual connection with other people, and we do have that. And then what brings you back to a place of centeredness and joy in the midst of chaos? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it meditation? Is it something else? And the question becomes, is it working for you? So what number would you give yourself spiritually? Those four numbers, like the air in the tires of your car. If one tire is too low, what happens is it's very difficult to drive the car over the course of time. And if all four tires are too low, what happens is you're going to ruin the car over the course of time. And speaking of someone who's got his tires all to the right level, his name is Marty Strong. He's retired Navy SEAL, combat veteran, CEO, and he serves on 2 corporate boards. He is a creativity and leadership consultant, motivational speaker. He's authored 9 novels, 3 business leadership books. We've done 2 of them on this show. Be Nimble, Be Visionary, and of course, Be Different. He suffered the loss of his oldest son. He's beat cancer twice. He's been shot at in a few exotic countries. He spent a lifetime meeting challenges head on, succeeding in 3 professions, anticipating crisis, and more. He's a thought-provoking writer. I absolutely agree with that. And speaker and a guest expert with over 350 appearances in national cable TV and hundreds of radio and podcast interviews to his credit. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show and welcome my friend Marty Strong. Welcome back to A New Direction, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Jay.
Let's dig right in. This book is meaty and it's a lot. And I've got 30 some odd pages of notes, and we're not going to get through them. Your first chapter is entitled The Vision Thing. And I think what a great title of a chapter, The Vision Thing. Because it's part art, it's part science. We don't understand it. Walk us through how our mindset should wrap around the idea of being this vision thing and being visionary.
Well, I think I call it a thing because it's ill-defined for most people. If you ask them to define vision, other than optical, they kind of stare at you, and they immediately jump to something like dreaming, which is an aspect of having a far-sighted vision of the future. But really, what it comes down to is, do you have the confidence and the comfort to release the current reality a little bit, and the way you've tethered yourself to the next 5 minutes or the next 20 minutes, the things that are going to happen that you trust in, and push yourself out into the future. And the further you push yourself, the more the known information dissipates and disappears, and the more the unknown takes over. And that's why the confidence is important in this, because some people just don't want to look out there and see what might happen or even contemplate it, because they're so fearful of it. They'd rather come running back to the warmth of, the present. And that's how most people operate. They don't realize there's any value in taking that risk. And yet, if you're going to be a leader, or if you're going to try to change your life, if you don't look out into the future, besides not seeing all the opportunities, you might get run over by the train that's coming at you. So you can also envision and see threats that are evolving, that trending in your direction or intersecting with the path that you're on. And that's another real valuable component of being visionary, and also really the value thesis of doing it as a practice.
You say, as a visionary leader, you need to stop generating strategy for strategy's sake and craft a path that is both resilient and provides a beacon to lead your organization to new and greater opportunities, as well as through the dark times that any business inevitably experiences. Help us understanding this idea of not stop generating strategy for strategy's sake, because I think we do get caught up into generating strategy, and we focus on that so much that perhaps we're not really focused on the right thing.
So strategy is used in two different manners. The first one's a verb, and that is the method to get you from point A to point B, B to C, C to D. And that's not big picture strategy. That's not the concept that's visionary that I'm discussing in the book. The other one, it's a noun. It's basically your view of what is going to happen in the future. And then what is your intent as an organization or as an individual with that view? Are you going to aim for a particular part of that future? Are you going to try to capture a particular aspect of that future? Are you going to try to mitigate the risk of that potential future that you're contemplating? And once you've kind of determined those things, then you back plan and you build the verb part of the strategy, the how-to, the milestones, the standard classic kind of project management aspects of it. You run your timeline from that horizontal viewpoint all the way back to the present, and then you load it all up with your resources and expenses and all the other kinds of costs associated with each step of the plan that you put together. And then you execute the strategy to get to the strategic outcome. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. The way it's commonly done these days, and it's probably the fault of, I'd say, starting with business schools, because business schools don't really teach strategy. They don't teach leadership either. There's a lot of things they don't teach. They basically teach you all the components and categories of business operations. And an MBA is the same program. You go through, you went through Finance 101, Finance 102, then you get in your MBA program, the Finance 201, 301, 401, and you same courses and categories in a program. And nowhere in there do they explain to you how to lead. And part of this is, if you're going to lead yourself to lead an organization, you have to have your head up off the tips of your toes. You have to look out there and see what you're about to run into. And the second thing they don't do is they don't teach people how to really think strategic strategy as a verb, the mechanics of moving from one point to the other. But the problem is, if you didn't do the first thing, then where you're going may not be where you want to go. And you may not even know that you're running into a problem, or you're running in the wrong direction, or you're running too slow, or you're running too fast. So the concept of strategy is difficult to grasp, and it's the reason the subtitle of the book is strategic leadership in the age of optimization, is that unfortunately over about the last 30 or 40 years, first led by publicly traded corporations, and then of course that becomes the best practices, and the B schools start following that. So this is what IBM's doing, or this is what Microsoft's doing, or whatever, when they're talking about putting together business plans. They're basically looking for short-term gratification related to stock. And that drives them to essentially do an incremental growth pattern, take whatever happened last year, flop it forward, and add 5 or 6 or 7% growth to it, and call it a strategy. They didn't change direction. They didn't adjust anything. You can imagine if you were flying as a pilot and you're going to run into a mountain and you say, well, I'm going to just keep doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to go 10% faster now. You're still going to fly into the mountain. You can't avoid the fact that there's something in your way. There's an obstacle that you can see. So strategy helps you see those obstacles, or see the gap in the mountain to the right, which is your opportunity. And it's not just the automatic extension of the past.
You talk about at the end of this chapter is that you say that this book will be anchored firmly in a this mindset that we talk about, this strategy and vision mindset. And you're, of course, the book is greatly influenced by, your time as a Navy SEAL, and also, being a CEO and being a leader. And you start to go into some traits, I feel, that build into this visionary leader that we're trying to be. And in chapter 2, you talk about do what's right, leadership ethics. Um, Help us understand, as we walk through some of these traits, how these traits build into the visionary leader that you're trying to encourage us to be.
I think one of the reasons why the vision thing is so difficult for people to grasp is a lot of the attributes and characteristics that you're commenting on, while they're taught and they're reinforced with children, usually by your parents. Do the right thing, be honest, don't harm other people, the golden rule, all those things. It tends to fade away as you get away from kind of the nuclear family that's reinforcing those values. And it's not because you're evil, it's not because you have a malicious intent. It's just that you don't understand the context in your new reality. If you're in the workplace, sure, you're not going to reach over and steal somebody's stapler off their desk and run away. You get that part of it. But what you also don't understand is that you have to be open to other people's opinions. You have to be truly open to other people's ideas. You have to sit and think about those opinions and ideas, especially if you disagree with them,
Mhm.
because that is a great moment of, I guess, doing the right thing. If you think you know exactly what you know about a particular subject, and somebody comes in and says something completely contrary to that, you can either blow it off and say, well, I know I'm right, or you can say, oh, well, here's the test. Here's the test of my idea. Here's the test of my point of view. I'm going to absorb and completely accept what they just said, and then I'm going to bench test what I think about this. And if you do it that way, you're open-minded and you're intellectually honest, and that is doing the right thing from a standpoint of leadership and contemplating the future and contemplating challenges. Because the opposite is terrible. The opposite is you're closed-minded, you know it all. Anybody that disagrees with you is not only going to be shot down, but they're going to have an emotional reaction to you shooting them down. So they're going to stop bringing up their ideas, or whether it's in opposition or if it's a brand new idea, you're going to start shutting down the communication. You're going to shut everybody emotionally is going to shut down around you, and it's all because of your own behavior.
Mm.
So doing the right thing is acting the right way, behaving the right way as a human being, and being humble enough and open enough to take in all this different disparate information from all these different angles of insight inside your building, outside your building, inside your industry, outside your industry. Because when you do all that, then you're being about as honest as you possibly can, and you're also probably going to be as informed as you possibly can.
I think it's interesting that in this particular chapter, that you make a statement here that says, always strive to improve professionally so your value to the team increases over time. And I stopped at that particular point in the book because I was saying to myself, so often, and correct me if I'm wrong if you haven't observed this, but I think quite often people get to a point in their career and they stop working on themselves. They don't, and I think it's an ethical responsibility that we have to improve professionally so that our value to the team does increase over time. I don't know that happens as I sometimes feel like it gets less and less as we move through the ranks. Am I misjudging that, or am I
No,
close
you're
there?
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So there's two aspects of it. One, the reason I even commented on it is the cultural hangover from being a Navy SEAL for 2 decades. SEALs they wake up paranoid that they're not the best. They wake up paranoid they're not the best in their squad, their platoon, their troop, their squadron, their command. They're not the best in the entire SEAL community. And that pushes them every day to learn something new or to be better and practice at something until they're better. And that means that basically, as long as you're a SEAL, you're in a constant state of trying to hone your skill set, to gain more knowledge, to learn languages, learn about cultures. Not necessarily because you know exactly how it's going to be applied, but because it makes you stronger and better, and it makes you a better teammate. And if everybody's doing that at the same time, if you have 10 or 20 people doing that as a lifestyle, then you're basically constantly getting stronger and stronger and stronger, individually and together. Okay, so that's the way it is in the SEALs. That's the way it is in most small unit special operations in any service. The other part of it is, and unfortunately, and I talked about this a little bit and be different, you hit a point where you've been told what to do academically. You've been pushed by your family, you've been pushed by teachers, maybe by societal expectations, get good grades in high school, then you get to go to college. You get good grades in college, you get a good job. But let's say you did all that, and then you get to your job, and then they say, well, stick around here for 5 years, you get a promotion. Stick around for another 3 years, you get a promotion. There's always some kind of a weird, very linear aspect to being better as an individual. And it's always somebody else's idea of what it means to be better as an individual. So what you really have to do is take that responsibility on yourself and say, okay, I can do those things if those are the prerequisites for certain things, but it doesn't mean I can't learn Chinese or Spanish. It doesn't mean I can't learn about other cultures. It doesn't mean I can't learn to write better, to conceive of ideas better, to use graphic programs so I can display my ideas and thoughts in a more dramatic and a more impactful way. All these things that I may not know, all these tools that I may not have. And if you take charge of that responsibility, if it's your responsibility, not just the institution's and your sponsor's responsibility, then you'll transcend any job you've ever been in. You'll blow out of every position you've ever been in. And whether they utilize all those capabilities or not, so what? As you go through life, you'll find this weird thing that, chance favors the prepared mind. And that was Louis Pasteur said that. And you basically, when preparedness and chance come together, is opportunity. So you're making this potential future opportunity a real thing by pushing and striving to be a better person or a better professional. And I absolutely believe that. I've seen people do it. I've been doing it. And unfortunately, most people aren't set up that way mentally, psychologically, and emotionally, especially as young adults and moving forward. They get stuck in their rut. And what they know is what they've known for the last 10 years instead of trying to evolve into something different.
And how dangerous is that as we age too, that we can get stuck in believing that I don't need to push myself any further because, I'm older now, and I just feel that the way to stave off age is to continue learning and improving and learning something new and getting better. It's not just the younger. I think it's people who age poorly. At least that's my opinion as well.
Young people too. Maybe you wouldn't be amazed. I've been amazed that, as soon as I came out of the military, I ran into people that were in their mid to late 20s and early 30s that acted like what I would have expected an 80-year-old to act.
Right.
Stuck in their ways, totally intransient, their opinions or attitudes and ideas locked in stone at some point, either unable or unwilling to break out of that and try something new and learn something, which is kind of odd because you would think that that's not an attribute, associated with youth.
Right.
Usually it's risk-taking, right?
Right.
But by their late 20s, most people have stopped trying to take risks.
Yeah.
And then there's that clash in the workplace because of that. If you have the stuck in the mud older worker and the stuck in the mud late 20s person, and they're staring at each other, well, neither one of them is going to blow each other out of their position. Right. And then if there's a late 20s, early 30s, kind of enlightened, life learning kind of a personality there, and the same thing in a 55-year-old, they're going to run circles around those other two sticks in the mud, and they're going to drive everything and they're going to be wondering why these two people don't want to participate.
Right.
Because they're not going to get on that creativity train because they don't know how to do it and they don't want to take the risk.
Yeah, you're right. His name is Marty Strong. The book, Be Visionary, Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization, just getting started here. Awesome. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, let me tell to you about my two sponsors. One of them is Zoundy. It's the ultimate game changer for authors, publishers, and professionals in the audiobook space. I use it. I love it. It's amazing. Talk about cutting edge marketing and customization. It's fantastic. special marketing tools. By the way, Zound, if you're an author publisher, Zoundy's going to help you maximize your audiobooks reach and revenue. It's fantastic. If you ever wanted to give away your book to your audiences, Zoundy will set you up a code, and you can give away 500 of your audiobooks before you ever get to your next session. I've got a code for LinkedIn. I got a code for Facebook. I got a code for X. I got a code for anything to give my book away. And here's the great part. I can now contact the people who are actually listening to my book because I got their email, and I can actually start engaging with what they want to hear and what they want to talk about. It's absolutely perfect. So listen, go to Zoundy.com/J, use my special code, J25, that's JAY25, and you'll unlock special savings. I'm telling you, it's worth it. I love it. You're going to love it too. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, listen, when it comes to life transition, they know what they're doing. And you're going, what do you mean life transition? They do real estate. Yeah, well, think about this. Every place you've ever lived has been a life transition, and they know how to take the stress and reduce that stress in that portion of that life transition when it comes to selling or buying your home. So when you're ready to sell or buy, start with the transition expert. Start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. It's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Marty Strong. His book, Be Visionary, Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization. Marty, I'm moving right straight into chapter 3, self-discipline and that attribute. You state right in the beginning, there are several attributes, I believe, help a good leader become a great leader. Self-discipline is one of those qualities. I could not agree with you more. Why do we have to remind people, especially leadership, that self-discipline is so important? Is it because we just don't have it?
I think it's important to remind people about self-discipline because it's a difficult thing to maintain. You can be a quote unquote disciplined person from everybody's point of view watching you. But if you're a human being, between your ears every day, you've got choices. You've got choices between going and doing that workout or not doing that workout. You got choices between maintaining the diet you thought you were gonna be on, or going and grabbing a donut. I mean, you're a human being, so it's a very difficult thing. It almost seems unobtainable to people that haven't been disciplined very much in their life. They see people like SEALs and Marines, and they think, oh, they're just super disciplined. That's just the way they are. And we were all idiot teenagers when we joined boot camp, and we all had to be taught some level of discipline. And I think as you go through life, if you start with some kind of coaching on discipline and you see that it allows you to string together a whole lot of little tiny steps, a whole lot of little tiny incremental moves and improvements. And all of a sudden you stop and you look back over a course of a period and you go, I just achieved something. I just acquired something. I just learned how to say 500 words in a different language, or I just learned how to play the guitar, even if it's just chords. I'm not Eddie Van Halen yet, but I didn't even know what a guitar was. And that's how you learn, right? It's this, there's this phrase, do the work. Discipline is really hard because you have to do the work, and it's incremental improvement. It's not quantum leap improvement. And I'm not going to say that everybody doesn't want to, work that hard to achieve what they think the goal is, the end state. But there's value in the journey. The discipline itself makes you more disciplined in almost everything that you do. So if you're studying a language, you tend to be more disciplined in other aspects of your life. If you're studying landscaping or learning how to be an artist or any of these things, you will start to be like when I was learning how to fly an airplane and was getting my instrument license, I became a better driver outside of the cockpit because I became tuned in to all these different factors, and my whole mentality was locked into accepting and learning and growing because I was doing it in one little aspect of my life. So yeah, it's tough. Self-discipline is difficult, but at the same time, it's extremely easy because it's only one step at a time. And even if you slip, you just get back on that horse and keep moving slowly.
Yeah, well, self-discipline is difficult. I don't care how long you try to discipline yourself. It's incredibly hard to maintain at times. Things get in the way, or you let things get in the way, and the next thing you know, your discipline is gone. And by the way, I think this is why you mentioned the issue of groupthink in this particular chapter, is because I think there's a required amount of self-discipline to be visionary, stay to your strategy, and not get caught up into groupthink. And I think there's a self-discipline practice there because it's really easy to get in, it's really easy to be swayed by the group, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fear of social failure in a lot of ways. Although if you're in an environment, especially in business, if everybody knows that to get along, you have to go along.
Hmm.
And then if you don't, that you become a pariah and you actually harm yourself in that organization as far as movement advantages and prospects. That's a real thing. If that's the case, you probably need to find someplace else to work. But it's real, and people talk to me about that all the time. Sure, what you say, Marty, is really great. However, here's my situation, and it's a normal situation. It's how many times do people talk about their workplace environment, interaction with people, and they talk about high school? Because the social aspect of it is like high school. You feel ostracized if you're different. And if you have your own voice and your own mind, and you know what your path is, and you're being true to yourself, you are different. One of my daughters, I have 5 kids. She was doing an intern program when she was going through college, and she was really doing great. And the person in charge of this business division was a friend of mine, and he called me up and said, "Man, she's just kicking butt. I just put her in charge of this, put her in charge of this, and I wish I could hire her, but she was only, I think, going into her junior year." And then she stopped doing that. She stopped wowing everybody. And what I found out later on was she was being pressured by 2 other women who worked there that were in their mid 20s, and they said, "You're making us look bad."
Mm.
And so she backed off because she wanted to get along for the summer with these people she had to work with, and she kind of dumbed herself down to be part of the group.
Mm.
So that's what I mean by groupthink. It can be an intellectual groupthink where everybody agrees that the answer is Y, period, the end, and there's no dissent. But it can also be a social and emotional kind of aspect of groupthink. We just want to think together because we want to feel socially like a group. So I think that's almost more powerful than the idea element of groupthink.
I agree. You also mentioned at the end of this chapter that force of will is like self-discipline, and both are needed to accomplish great things, difficult things. Discuss that for a minute.
So there's a moment when I was a young SEAL where probably in the selection course where I didn't want to do the next thing. I just did not want to do it. And because it was going to be hard, because I was very, very tired. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it very much. And you get beaten up to the point where you're tired of being beaten up. And you get to that point and you think about it. And here's where the vision thing comes in. What is the point of the exercise? It stinks to all those things I rattled off: playing the guitar, learning a language, dieting, working out, trying to get your fitness stuff. Intrinsically, they're not necessarily fun things to do. But you have to think about what the end is. What are you aiming for? What is it? Why is it justified? Why is the sacrifice justified and the self-discipline? And in that moment, I said, okay, I want to be a SEAL, and I don't want to quit. I want to be able to. The first thing was I don't want to quit. I want to be able to get to the end of the 6 months and be standing there saying, Marty Strong did not quit. I can say it to my dad. I can say it to my friends. I did not quit. The secondary thing was, and because I didn't quit, I get to be a SEAL. And therefore, I stepped into the next evolution and probably went, another week or two or whatever before I had that moment again. It's kind of a out of hell with it kind of a thing where that's the force of will part. You overcome the voices in your head that are telling you this is too hard, or there's alternatives that are more fun, easier, whatever. That's the donut thing. You can go the alternative is better than what you're putting yourself through. And being human, you have your days where you slip up, but the force of will thing is you will yourself back on track, and you will yourself to take that next step or two into the pattern, the behaviors that you set up as a discipline, because you see the end state. You look at the horizon and say, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. That's who I want to be. And it's just like I'm saying it. You have that conversation in your head. You be the narrator in your head. You take over and kind of suppress all that negative thinking, and you take a deep breath and you take a step forward.
Mm. Chapter 4 is entitled Confidence, Charisma, and Humor. I know that you discuss a lot about the difference between confidence and arrogance, which I think is important. I don't think people understand charisma very well. And I think leaders have a tendency to shy away from humor. So, where would you like to start? Would you like to start the confidence, arrogance part, what charisma is, or why humor needs to be brought in as a leader?
Well, I'm a big believer in humor just because I've worked with a lot of guys that we went through a lot of stuff together, a lot of physical pain, combat, all that. And anybody that's in the special operations community will tell you that 10 minutes after you get together with these guys, even if you haven't seen each other for 20 years, you're just laughing your ass off. You're telling jokes. I talked to one of my classmates from my bud's class. So we had 13 original graduates, and there's 10 of us left of those 13. One passed away about a week and a half ago. And so we were talking because of that person passing away. And, it would have been kind of a somber phone call, you would think. And then, hey, you remember that time? Next thing you know, we're laughing our ass off. A guy stepped into a hollow log at night on a patrol, and it was filled with these freaking huge bees. And we heard this hum, but we're in the dark, and he goes screaming, running down the road past the whole patrol, yelling, bees, 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 bees. And then the bees are going, and it's just like a cartoon. Like the only thing that it didn't have was an arrow of bees. And I forgot all about that. And I'm just, peeing my pants laughing. And the moment that you're on the top of a mountain in Norway, you're on your 4th day of a 2-day patrol, because there's a whiteout and you can't get down, and they can't get helicopters in, and you're running out of food and all that, and somebody says something funny, because what else are you going to do? You can cry. It's just humor tends to have this massive impact and power over people when they're at their worst, when they're in their worst situation. Viktor Frankl talks about it in Man's Search for Meaning and his experience in the Nazi camp. So also the thing is about humor, it's not off-putting. It unbalances people who are afraid. Mm-hmm. So if the leader is standing there, and it's part of it, that kind of humor, I'm talking about cracking jokes. You don't start throwing dad jokes out in the middle of the crisis. All you have to do is just kind of have a half smile on your face and look at somebody who looks like they're worried or freaked out. And just kind of have a little twinkle in your eye, which goes to the charisma piece too. And they see you're poised, you're comfortable. Therefore, they assume you're confident, and you look like you're centered because you have this little half smile on your face. Now, if you grin at them, they'll think you're crazy. It's like, no, too far. And I watched leaders do this all the time. I watched leaders in crisis when I was a young SEAL. And they'd stand there, and I've read so many biographies of both military leaders and commercial leaders, business leaders, politicians. And this comes up over and over and over again. This one person standing in the storm who just turns and just kind of with a little bit of a half smile or twinkle in their eye, or they wink at somebody, and the whole attitude of everybody changes because they feel their leader has a grasp on what needs to be done. That all wraps up. The confidence and the humor tends to exude charisma, or what people would characterize as charisma. You don't have to do anything dramatic. You don't have to be like Errol Flynn and leap through the air and do all kinds of heroic things. You just have to be the person in the room that's calm. And usually when crisis hits for real, there aren't too many people in the room that are being calm, even the ones that have titles that say they should be the leaders. So it's something to think about. It's something that when you see it, you know it immediately. And you can practice it, because when you have a crisis in your own life, or when you have a crisis, like back to one of my kids got in a car wreck years ago, and when in between, I think it was her freshman year in college, and she was in another state, and we get this call at 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's panicked and she's crying, and and everybody in the family's freaking out and panicking, crying because she's on speakerphone. And I just walked over and took the phone. I said, "Are you hurt?" She said, "No." I said, "Is anybody else hurt?" She said, "No." I said, "Okay, just take time, take a breath."
Mm.
And I said it just like that. Not because I wasn't worried, not because I wasn't thinking worst case or any of that stuff, because that's not what she needed.
Mm.
Actually, that's not what the people in the room around me needed. They just needed somebody to just kind of, chill it out a little bit. Because if there was something wrong, the last thing you want to do is not be in control and balanced.
Mm.
So that's essentially what I'm discussing in the book.
His name is Marty Strong. The book, Be Visionary: Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization. Absolutely outstanding read. You're getting just a small portion of the amazing awesomeness that this book is. I have to tell you, it is a deep dive. It is a dig. It is life changing. Seriously, it's leadership changing. You need to get yourself a copy. Amazon, every bookstore or sold. Check it out. It's called Be Visionary. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, Zoundy, I can't talk about it enough. I love it. I've had it since the beginning they started. It is an audiobook platform that really is for authors, publishers, and professionals who are working in the audiobook space. The big difference is that unlike any other audio book place that you might go to as an author, I can actually connect with the people who are listening to my book. And that's huge because not only if I'm going out to speak somewhere, and let's say I'm speaking before 500 people or 1,000 people, and I give them a copy of my audiobook before I get there, they already know a little bit about me and they're already comfortable with me as a speaker. But here's the bigger part for me is I'm already getting to create a relationship with those people who have already listened to my book because they have their email and I get to know something about them and I can reach out to them. Listen, check out zoundy.com/J, zoundy.com/J. Use my code J25, unlock your special savings. It's so worth it. You're going to love it. I'm telling you, I do. It is absolutely fantastic. Check it out, zoundy.com/J. Use promo code J25, Jay25. You're going to be so glad you did. Linda Craft Team Realtors, the other sponsor that we've had since the beginning. Listen, check out their website, lindacraft.com. I'll tell you why. I think it's the most comprehensive real estate website that exists out there. That's my opinion. I know, but I tell you, yes, they have all the things all the other websites do, but here's where they go the extra mile. Well, they've got their Real Estate Right Now podcast on there, which is fantastic. If I do say so myself, I may or may not have something to do with that, so I may be a little biased. But here's the other part. They had a child psychologist write an article on how to move with children. They had a veterinarian write about how to move with pets. It's the extra steps that they go in that website that make it so comprehensive and so good. So listen, when you're ready to start your real estate journey, whether it's selling your home, buying your home, check it out, lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Marty Strong. The book, Be Visionary, Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization. Really, Marty, again, I said this before the show, I'll say it again. This book was a really, really, really deep dive for me, and it was really, really good. So I really loved this book. I loved Be Different too, don't get me wrong. And I can't wait to read Be Nimble. But this book really, really powerful for me. So thank you so much for writing it. The chapter 5 is called The Art of Deciding, The Art of Deciding. And I thought, well, that's a kind of an odd way to take a look at decision. Is it art or science? So walk us through the art of deciding, and is it art or science? Or is it a little bit of both?
There's the science of it is the mechanical piece. That project management is science, right? And the planning and structure of project management is based on science. It's based on engineering theories of production, and they're very logical. Everything's very logical. So decision making, if you're following a schedule, should not even be something you have to worry about. It should actually happen when you hit that moment where you're supposed to hit that moment. and you go to the next step, the next phase, and you spend the money, or you hire the person, or you let the person go that you're supposed to hire or let go at that particular moment in time. But we're all emotional human beings, and so we get there and we start to act emotionally, which means we start to second guess the planning. We start to second guess the logic behind the process. And that's what most people run into. They tend to second guess the process when they get to the point where they have to do something they don't want to do. So they're fighting against that feeling of, and it's not so much fear either. It's just if they're a nice person, it means they have to let the first phase of the project team go, because now they're going to the second team, and they've really got to like these people. They come up with ways to kind of figure out how to dodge the decision. If the decision's about spending money, it could be that they're concerned they're going to be held accountable because things aren't going that well, and they're kind of behind schedule and over budget, and now they're going to spend some more money, the next tranche of money, and so they start figuring out ways to hedge and not take the action. So that's just regular decision making. There's the art part of it is, how do you convince yourself first, and then the people that are going to be affected by your decision, that the moment has arrived. It's time to do it. It's time to, as they would say in the SEAL teams, metaphorically, it's time to pull the trigger. It's time to execute. And the more you're put in these decision-making positions, and that's why military training does this all the time, because you build up essentially a judgment methodology in your own mind. What you have to go through, how you deal with the emotional issues related to it, and then you got to make a decision. And then you make the decision, or you don't, and you procrastinate, and then you're evaluated by the trainers and everything. And they say, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you act? And if you don't have a good reason, then they figure there's some emotional element to it. Now, as much as SEALs practice and plan based on basically the plan is a set of predetermined decisions, go left at this point, go right at this point, go up at that point, go down at that point. When you get to the actual moment of making the decision, you have three choices. Don't do anything, which some people, they just don't decide. They avoid the accountability of it. They avoid the emotional issues related to it, or the social reaction to it. You can follow the plan to the T based on the logic and make a decision. Or you can look at the landscape, look around you, and say, has the logic changed? Has my underlying assumptions changed? Do I need to think this through and make a different decision? Even if it's just a few degrees off of center, you have to stop and look at. That's the art part. The art part is being in that moment and dealing with those three possible paths. Don't do anything, do exactly what the plan said, or do something slightly different than the plan. And business is there's probably more moments like this in business in a given week than any SEAL commander would run into in most of his career. Because in business, you're in a constant state of hiring, firing, promoting, spending resources, expanding, contracting, competing, and especially depending on where you are in the structure, if you're leading, this is what you get bombarded with all day. And if you're the kind of person that can't understand the art of knowing where you are and which of those three paths is the correct path, and even worse, if you're the kind of person that just says, I'm just going to procrastinate, not make a decision, and then in time, you'll be found out and you'll be removed because the world's swirling around you and you're just sitting there protecting yourself and not wanting to make a decision. So that's the art part of it. And I'll give you one quick story. And so in the movies, they show SEALs with, these mock-ups and everything's, here's the target and all that, which doesn't really ever happen. And I got a mission. We're supposed to go do this thing. And I was going to have helicopters assigned to me. And I knew that the people in charge wanted me to fast rope my team into this compound. And I didn't think that was the right way to do it, but I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and put my plan, because I had to write it down and get it submitted to a 1-star, and he had to say yes. So I got the plan, I got the helicopters I wanted, and in comes, the helicopters the next day to pick up my team, and they shut down, a couple Blackhawks, they walked up to me and they said, hey, we want to talk to you about something. I go, sure, what's up? this is crazy. We're so tired of us dangling above these targets being shot at while people are sliding down these ropes. It doesn't make any sense to us. And I said, well, we're not going to do it that way. What do you mean? So that was my plan for show. And here's my plan for go. And we sat down and grabbed a bunch of rocks in the parking lot. And I told them what we were going to do. And did I make that decision exactly what I was going to do when I put in the plan? No, I put in the plan because that was the program management set of rules, expectations. That's what they wanted from me. And I wasn't going to get a yes unless I put in what they were expecting. Because the people that I was submitting this to were not people that were going to deviate from the plan, the logic. However, at that point, I had about 17 or 18 combat missions under my belt, and I knew that things change and the targets change, and sometimes it's the idea of assaulting right into something, jumping into the volcano doesn't make a lot of sense. So I got with my people, and we came up with a different idea. We were going to an island where this compound was, and we were going to have the helicopters come in at night and drop us about 300 yards off in the water, but keep flying, and we would just drop off the back, and we'd swim in, and we'd go look at the compound at night, and then we'd wait till the sun came up, and we'd check things out. And helicopters weren't at risk. We got to see what was really there. And that was my, first accepting the logical decision and making a decision to submit my plan and getting approval, but then looking at the reality of it and deviating from it a little bit. I still went to the target. I still got the job done, but I used my judgment and modified the logical plan and made a decision. And that's kind of the art form component of it.
We're almost done here. It's gone so fast. I just want you to comment on something here at the end of this chapter that I think is brilliant. And it's on boldness. You say vision and moderation are not compatible concepts. Being bold moves mountains, changes the courses of rivers, and builds mighty nations. There's a reason champions of moderation are nowhere to be found in the history books. Talk about the importance of being bold in terms of being a visionary.
So the universe is it's interesting, it's complex, but one thing that's well known is that the universe has a set of rules, the physics, which means everything is changing. Everything around us is changing. Every element of our lives are changing every single day. So if you try to lock yourself into stasis, if you try to control the universe, and you're not thinking you're doing this, you think that life is about mitigating risk, and you mitigate risk by taking very, very small steps or no steps at all. And if you take any steps, you do everything in moderation. You control. Control protects you from risk. Well, while you're sitting there doing that, the universe is swirling all around you. Your competitors are all getting smarter. They're creating new services and products, and they're going to beat you because you're all hunkered down, right? And that's the reason why you don't see champions of moderation in history books. They're not movies about, there's not. How long would that movie be? You have to wait, 6 hours in the movie before something new happens. Moderation is as a strategy is not even risk mitigation in my view. It's business avoidance. It's growth avoidance. It's learning avoidance. It's challenge avoidance. And if you're that concerned about the consequences of all those things, you probably should be in a different profession. And yet, on the flip side of that, if you look at, all the, I think people I mentioned in the book, Einstein, maybe you don't think he's as bold as Alexander the Great, but he was, like 23 years old when he came up with the special theory of relativity, and everybody hated it. And he couldn't get a job in universities for years. That's why he was in the patent office working, because nobody wanted him because it was too outlandish. It was too crazy. It was too bold. Alexander the Great, I'm going to take the Macedonian army, and not only am I going to conquer the rest of Greece, I'm going to move out and I'm going to conquer the rest of the world. Yeah, right. Sure, whatever. He did it. Napoleon, I think he became a brigadier general, the equivalent of brigadier general, when he was about 22 or 23 years old. And he thought, I see a vision for Europe under the Napoleonic Code and all that. And they were so sure that he was a non-personality, a non-player, they invited him into the senior leadership, the triumvirate of the three top leaders, because they needed a guy in a uniform. Well, that was a mistake. So you tend to know the names of all the people that have been bold. And you don't have to conquer nations to be bold. You don't have to come up with the greatest theory of physics to be bold. But being an adult, being a father, parent, being a business leader, boldness helps. Boldness, fortune favors the bold is a saying. It's a real one. You only risk versus reward. If you're afraid to risk, you're not going to get much reward. So there's the upside to being bold, but you do it smart. SEALs don't jump naked into the middle of 500 guys. They get armored up. They get all their guns. They get a bunch of guns in the sky. They prep stuff. They make it as fair a fight as they can, and then they try to not make it a fair fight when they show up. And you can do the same thing individually, in the commercial and personal context.
This has been great, Marty. I've enjoyed our time together for this hour, which is always goes fast when I'm with you. Tell people how they can reach you if they want to hire you to speak, or more information on your books, or whatever they might want to get a hold of you. How can they do that?
Sure. Well, two easiest ways. Go to martystrong.com. I have all my information there. Or a lot of people connect with me through LinkedIn. So I invite you to come to LinkedIn. Put out a request down there, and I just got a speaking gig the other day from that venue. So
awesome.
martystrong.com and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Perfect. Stay with me, folks. This is the show. You know what I say? You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Life is not always fair. It's not always going to give you what you want, but you still have control over your attitude. Take charge of it. Your effort is tied to your excellence. How excellent will you choose to be today? We all get punched in the mouth or punched in the gut and get knocked down. It's up to you to get back up, and we need you to get back up. Why? Because you're worth it, and we need you on the team. Thanks for being on the show. You had a lot of choices. You chose us. I appreciate you doing that. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, a positive review wherever you listen to the show. And you know what I say to you all over the world in great appreciation and gratitude, and that is this: ciao, everybody.